You might have seen in the news recently that some books are being edited, or it's probably more appropriate to say they're being censored for sensitivity. And as book publishers would probably say, to make them more relevant in today's world. Now, obviously, this brings up a couple of issues and questions. The biggest being, who decides what gets changed and why? The original author or someone else? If it's the original author, then that's completely different if it's somebody else making the changes. But really, the biggest issue I see with this is I can see this easily becoming a slippery slope. There are a ton of books that cover sensitive subjects or include language that nowadays might be considered a little inappropriate. If we are just starting this now, what's to stop us from going back and editing the thousands upon thousands of books that deal with sensitive themes or include language that might be inappropriate? And who is reviewing these changes to make sure that the author's original meaning is not being changed, thus changing the book entirely? Those are all valid questions and concerns that we need to keep in mind. But like I said, this is something that has been hitting the news a lot more recently, so let's look at the two big examples. The first example we'll look at is R.L. Stine, the author of the Goosebumps series of books. In this case, Stine is going through his Goosebumps series and editing it to remove insensitive language. Now, I remember reading the Goosebumps series a long time ago when I was but a wee little man, and I absolutely loved it. I don't remember there being any insensitive language in the books, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't present, of course. After all, it's been like 20 plus years since I've read any of those books. And this is something akin to the Star Wars problem. Once the creator distributes their work publicly, should they be able to go back and make changes to it? And I don't mean going back and editing special effects to make them look better. I'm talking about actual changes, such as in Star Wars of who shot first, Greedo or Han Solo. Well, they are, after all, the original creators of that material. Shouldn't they have a right to go back and make changes they see fit? I can absolutely see why some people would agree with that and be totally fine with that. But in my opinion, once you release something publicly, it becomes final and the public owns it. So going back to make changes to this, I always kind of found inappropriate. So instead of rewriting the past, maybe what these authors should do is change the way they write in the future to show how they have changed and evolved, and to make the writing style more empathetic for future generations. The second example is with Roald Dahl's children's books being edited to remove language that has been deemed offensive. Puffin, which is the publisher of these children's stories, has gone through some rewriting to remove language that it has deemed to be offensive. In this case, it's removing words like fat and ugly, amongst other minor verbiage changes of the similar ilk. So in this case, the question we need to ask ourselves is, who is the ones making these changes, and how are they determining what has to be changed in these books? Well, in this case, Puffin has hired what they called to be sensitivity readers to let them know what should be changed. Who these people are and how they were picked for this job wasn't made readily apparent, though. But if they're just changing a couple of words in these books, that doesn't seem too concerning, does it? Well, according to reports, these changes aren't as minor as they might appear on the surface. Hundreds of changes have been made to the text, and new passages have actually been added into the stories that weren't originally written by the author. Now, the publisher assures that it is not unusual to review the language during new print runs, and that any changes were small and carefully considered. Now, this just reeks of PR speak in my opinion, which isn't too surprising. Now, obviously, you can go back and make minor edits to the text without changing the story. Think about fixing typos. That's fine. But that's not the issue we are talking about here. We are talking about actual changes to the verbiage in these books, and even adding in new passages as well. And depending on what's being changed, this could have a direct impact on the characters or the story itself. Something else worth mentioning is that the publisher has added a passage at the bottom of the copyright page of the latest editions of these books, which states that the wonderful words of Roald Dahl can transport you to different worlds and introduce you to the most marvelous of characters. This book was written many years ago, and so we regularly review the language to ensure that it can continue to be enjoyed by all today. And this is great, or at least it would be if they didn't change the original text. Honestly, it would be more appropriate to include this passage to state that the book was written in a different time period when the world was far more different than it is today, and that the author's words have been included in their original form to maintain consistency with the author's original vision. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening now. Another example is with Ursula K. Le Guin's children's books, which are going through the same process as Roald Dahl's books. I have included the links to these 3 examples in the description box down below, so please feel free to read up about this if you would like to. One other thing I wanted to bring up was that I was really happy to see that everyone pretty much agrees on this. Regardless of your background or your political leaning, it is really great to see how a lot of people agree that these publishers should not be making changes to these books. And does that make this video a little irrelevant since everyone already agrees and I'm not adding anything new to it? I mean, okay, maybe. But I still wanted to share this with my little circle in case anyone wasn't aware of what was going on. Because as I said at the beginning of this video, I can easily see this becoming a slippery slope, and for this to happen a lot more in the future, which I honestly would really hate to see. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.